Happy November, everyone! Today we're gonna be doing a bookshop tour. Some of the books we're gonna be sharing today is some of them from the store and some others from the library. So this is one I got from the store. The store we go with my husband is a secondhand shop. So this one today is called Home by Carson Ellis. Something I know about here is the she paint with like a really restricted color palette that is pretty neutral and just have some pop of colors in red, but in kind of like all her books is kind of different combinations of this palette. So it's pretty interesting how like just a few colors can lead us and kind of like it's a representation of her. So every time I see on the shelves, I kind of like, oh, it's a book from Carson. So this one is pretty cool because it said all the homes that people live, and some others are real, some other ones are like invented or created by her. So I think that's pretty fun. And I like about this book the simplicity of the story. And I always have traveled to, I don't know, when I wanna write something or like when I'm thinking about a picture book, it's always like, oh, but I don't have anything to tell. And I always need to remind me of like, it's the stories like this one that is so simple, but how the simple get into, I don't know, like connected to other people, because that's the point, it's simple. So I really love this, and I love that she brings her own ideas plus real ideas. Yeah, this is pretty fun. And then at the end it's kind of like, oh, and I live here, so it's kind of interesting. And this is actually how she looks, so it's like really interesting how she even put herself in the story without being too obvious. So this one is called The Art of Watercolor. This one is not a normal pick, but I've been trying to pick these books because I'm trying to build a class for next year. So every type of content like this helped me a lot of like how they lay out the materials, how they lay out like the examples or like the activities. And I love this one because it's pretty detailed about everything. That's pretty weird. Like normally this type of books it's just like, okay, let's paint, and like they don't walk you through the steps. So I love this one, and I always been feeling like, because I didn't study arts or any related to arts, I was like advertisement major, so I always feel like kind of this lacking of like getting to know this, that color theory, and like I guess more of the history of art. And these books kind of like help me to comprehend more and like even adapting or like understanding my own process, like, oh, I actually like really work in this, but like with my own feelings, you know. So it's always good to go back to theory and like learn and kind of like teach to others how they can do the same. So this one is pretty cool because they also show techniques, how to do techniques. So this one for sure is something I will be like playing with in this and next month to start building that class. And like even my class is gouache, but I think it's pretty interesting like how lay out all the examples. This other one, it's one of my favorite illustrators. This one is actually from the library. Her name is Laura Carlin, and written by Nicola Davies. I just love to pick the books from her when she is an illustrator because it's really out of the normal. I think that's why I like her. It's like pretty like loose, playful. It gets you like, oh, it doesn't need to be too structured, or like this can be more simple, or the story can be more simple in this way. So I think that's what I like about her. And like even not being really perfect with like mistakes, and like she just like living there. So it's like really intrigued um, that she also have this freedom to work this way, and also like people around her kind of validate this. It's kind of really cool. A few I don't know, art directors can be hard, or like the writer has another vision, so it's like, oh, but this looks like a mistake, but actually for her it kind of like is integrated with the illustration, so it's kind of cool. This story is pretty, it's really pretty. Yeah, so actually if you want to see books, always like the library is really good option, especially because they can be really expensive to buy new. So that's why I go with this used store or like library, and I just got them for like a few weeks, and I take pictures for like my folder of like references. I like go through a lot. So it's always good like if you don't have a lot of money, or like you don't want to spend a lot of money in books, because I know it can be really expensive. Like actually the library is really really good. She also does tiles that it just blows my mind how she does tiles and like ceramic and do illustration in the tiles. And she got like this studio with a partner and a friend, and they do tiles together with like big projects or small projects. Look at this is so so pretty. Look at the shape of the moon, that it doesn't need to be the classical. So I love details like this one that is like out of the normal. And just playing with crayons, yeah, watercolor, you can tell, and color pencils. Our next book is this one that I love because it's kind of the new ones from Felicita. She's an Italian illustrator, and I don't know, I might be wrong, but she's saying in her social media that this book is being the hardest one. So I can tell why, because the story is complex. So it's really intrigued or amazing to see how an illustrator kind of like challenge themselves to work through the text and creating something that makes sense. And yeah, I don't know, I feel like if I will get this text I will struggle the same way, because it's really poetic, but it's also kind of weird. So it's like, how do I express this in drawings? How do I express this in like a sense graphically? So it's really, really cool to see how she kind of like make this problem like a solution, and actually make sense at the end of the book. um, and it's just fascinating how this being one of her last work. So it's pretty cool. She works in watercolor and color pencil. She sometimes use gouache. So I just love, like you can tell here, this looks like watercolor and this looks like color pencil, but I know she sometimes use gouache. So I love these scenes. By night, this reminds me she used to paint. I don't know if she still does, probably like this, kind of like on this night, like blockings. She had a lot of real paintings in canvas like this, so it's pretty cool that she's integrating that kind of a style in this picture book in specific. So you can tell here start like a normal story and then gets to like really weird text, or part of the story like it's like animals and like body animals, so it's like get really weird, like why you're telling me this, but it's actually all makes sense at the end when kind of like they're playing with their dad. So it's like really really cool how this whole world start developing to get to this point. And I think when you start just like what is happening, and at the end you find that surprise is like really special, and like hair like in the costume of like the characters, it's just like really really cool. So this one is pretty amazing. And the last book is called Green on Green. It's also illustrated by Felicita Salad. So this is pretty cool because I think she's really good in like solving problems in text. This text is more poetic, so it's literally like a poem. So it's like jello and like plates with like this seasons. So I think probably would be like a poems about seasons. But I don't know if I would get this text. It's just like how you play with not being literal, but like how you need to also be thinking of like this is gonna be children books. How can I like even tell my own story in like the illustration? So this is actually part of like when you start picking up books, try to see what are like what is the recipe for that book. When I mean the recipe is like, for example, this one, the text go this way, but also like the illustrator can like have their own story. That's kind of like a recipe book. And a lot of books, they're like kind of this style, like the text go one way and it gives you the opportunity to like the image go a different way, and both complement each other. So it's kind of like cool when you start seeing books, ask yourself what's the recipe of this book, because you're gonna start finding that a lot of books follow the same recipe, of course in like adding their own details. But it's really fascinating because these kind of like recipes or tools are gonna help you to develop in like struggling with your own writing a story. So like when you're trying to illustrate a story, these recipes are gonna like be in your back pocket, and I'm like, oh, actually I can make this book this way. In Colombia we don't really have that seasons, so I went like 2 weeks ago to Colorado, and everything was like this. And when I get this book last week, I was like, oh my god, it's like the perfect picture of like how Colorado look like right now. It's really really special, like all the desserts here, the pumpkin, I don't know, it said cinnamon spice almond between cinnamon, almond, and brown on green. So this is probably like a cinnamon spice pie or something, and like all of this pumpkin and pears, they're part of the season. So I think she's really good on like picking actually what it means to be in the seasons. Yeah, I love this book, and it's so simple. I think it's like the way of like warmth and like cozy of the houses, and like how simple even it's like the the structure of the drawing, or like perspective. It doesn't need to be too wild. And I love this winter season, like a scene. It's really, really pretty. Yeah, so at the end, as you can tell, she also tells the understory of like the mom being pregnant in the whole book, and at the end is like her own story, I think, of like her little sister, brother being there. So this will be my last book for today's book tour. So I hope you like it,